What happens when a self-made hotel owner sits down for a quiet buffet breakfast at one of his own locations, only to witness his staff mocking an elderly guest just feet away? Kellan Easton had built his hotel business from scratch. What started with one rundown roadside inn 15 years ago had grown into a chain of 18 boutique hotels across the country. Clean, affordable, and known for warm service, that was the brand he'd poured everything into. But lately, something felt off. Guest reviews were slipping. Not by a lot, but enough. A few scattered complaints about rude staff, cold food, and management being unhelpful. It wasn't enough to signal a collapse, but it was enough to bother Kellan. He hated second-hand answers. He wanted to see for himself. So he picked a mid-sized location in Colorado, one of the newer properties, opened just under a year ago. He'd never met the staff there personally. Most thought of him as just a name in an email someone from corporate they'd never see. And that's exactly what he needed. He shaved his beard, wore prescription glasses, and dyed the sides of his usually salt and pepper hair to solid brown. He booked a room under the name Raymond Ellis, a retired history teacher from Ohio. He even limped slightly, just to sell the character. His assistant helped him set it up, and no one else at the hotel had any clue. He checked in quietly on a Tuesday afternoon. The front desk staff didn't look up when he walked in. One of them, a woman in her 20s with sharp eyeliner and a bored tone, slid the key card across the counter. Room 213. Breakfast is in the dining hall from 6 to 10. Don't be late, they hate cleaning up after stragglers, she said, not even glancing at him. Kellan nodded slowly. Thank you. She didn't respond. He went to his room, reviewed the guest book, and made a few notes in a leather-bound journal he'd brought. He wasn't here to nitpick. He just wanted to observe. Maybe the problems were minor, maybe it was just a bad month. But by morning, he'd know for sure. At 7 the next day, he walked into the hotel's breakfast area. It was a modest buffet: eggs, sausage, pancakes, fruit, oatmeal. The kind of spread he'd insisted all the hotels keep consistent. The dining room was only half full, mostly older couples and a few business travelers. He grabbed a tray, served himself a plate of scrambled eggs and toast, then sat near the back watching the staff. 2 employees stood near the juice bar, whispering and laughing. One of them, a skinny guy with a name tag that read Brady, nudged the other. Watch this, Brady muttered. Old man Jenkins is coming. Kellan turned his head slightly. An elderly man, probably in his 80s, slowly shuffled toward the buffet. He wore a faded windbreaker and carried a small notebook like he was trying to remember something. Brady raised his voice. Oh no, hide the quasas. He's gonna hoard 5 of them like yesterday. The other staff member, a young woman with short blonde hair named Tori, laughed too loudly. Seriously, he took half the fruit bowl yesterday, like he's stocking up for winter. Kellan's jaw tightened. The old man looked confused for a second, then hunched his shoulders and quietly turned back toward his table. Damn, Brady said. I didn't even say his name and he knew. Man's probably half blind but has radar for shame, Tori joked. Kellan stood up. He didn't say anything, just walked over and poured himself orange juice. Brady glanced at him, gave a stiff nod, and looked away, didn't recognize him. Good. He returned to his seat, but his appetite was gone. A few minutes later, a young housekeeper with a ponytail passed by with a cart. She paused when she saw the old man sitting alone. Morning, Mr. Wexler, she said gently. You want me to grab you another cup of coffee? The man smiled faintly. That'd be kind of you, Grace. Kellan noted her name immediately, Grace. He watched her walk over to the coffee station and pour a fresh cup, adding a splash of cream before returning to Mr. Wexler. You need anything else? She asked. No, dear, you're always very kind. Brady and Tori watched from the side, smirking. Kellan caught their eye. Tori quickly turned away. He waited until breakfast was over. After the guests left, he walked past the staff area, pretending to look for the restroom. He overheard Brady. I swear, if he comes back tomorrow, I'm gonna hide the fruit bowl. You're terrible, Tori said, laughing again. But seriously, it's like he thinks this place is a food shelter." They both laughed again. Kellan walked outside. His hands were shaking a little, not out of anger at least, not just anger, disappointment, disgust. He sat on a bench and stared at the mountains for a while. This wasn't the company he built. He stayed for the rest of the day watching small things. Guests with simple requests getting brushed off. A couple who asked for a cab were told to Google it. But Grace, the housekeeper, was different. She smiled at every guest. Helped an older woman carry her tray. Picked up a spilled juice cup without complaint. That night, Kellan sat in his room staring at the ceiling. He had a choice: walk away and have someone else look into it like usual, or go deeper. He picked up the phone and called the district manager. "Hey, I want you to stay out of the Colorado location this week. No calls, no check-ins. Something's off. I'm here, but I'm undercover. Do not tell anyone." The voice on the other end paused. "Understood. You okay?" Kellan looked out the window. "I saw something this morning that I can't unsee. I need to see what else has been happening behind closed doors." The next morning, Kellan returned to the breakfast area a few minutes before 7. It was quieter than the day before, with fewer guests lingering near the buffet. He took a seat by the far wall and waited with his coffee, eyes focused but casual. Brady wasn't on shift, but Tori was. She stood behind the juice dispenser, tapping her phone with one hand and stirring a cup of yogurt with the other. A manager in a navy sweater vest walked in, glanced over the room, and walked right past a napkin spill near the entrance without acknowledging it. A guest nearly slipped on it 2 minutes later. Kellan stood and grabbed a stack of napkins from the supply shelf himself, bending down slowly to cover the spill. As he straightened, the sweater-vested manager finally noticed him. "You okay there, sir?" "Just didn't want someone falling," Kellan said. "Looked like an accident waiting to happen." The manager gave a short nod, then moved on without a word of thanks. A middle-aged couple walked in and he turned his attention to them, greeting them with a scripted tone. After breakfast, Kellan lingered near the elevator bank. Grace passed by with her cart, wiping her brow with the back of her wrist. She looked tired but alert, focused on her checklist. He stepped closer, careful not to interrupt her rhythm. "You're Grace, right?" he asked in a low tone. She blinked, then gave a polite smile. "Yes, sir." "Can I help you with something?" No, just noticed how you always take time for people." Her eyes darted away for a second, like she didn't know what to do with the compliment. "Well, they're guests, that's the job." "Is it? Doesn't seem like everyone sees it that way." She hesitated. "You're not wrong." Kellan wanted to ask more, but a supervisor's voice barked down the hall. "Grace, room 409 still showing dirty. Let's go." "I got it," she called back, already wheeling her cart into place. Kellan stepped aside as she passed, her pace picking up. By midday, he made his way into town. A local cafe sat across from a small park, and he ordered a sandwich to go. On his walk back, he passed a man in a maintenance uniform sitting behind the hotel near the loading dock, eating chips from a paper bag. His name badge read Lewis. Kellan paused. "You're off shift," Lewis looked up startled. "Lunch, 15 minutes. Mind if I sit?" Lewis shrugged, moving his jacket off the bench. Kellan sat beside him, watching a delivery truck back toward the rear entrance. "Busy place," Kellan said. Lewis scoffed. "Too busy." "How many on the maintenance team?" "Just me." Kellan turned slightly. "Just you?" "For the whole property," Lewis nodded, crumpling the chip bag. "They said they were hiring another guy." "That was 8 months ago. You cover everything?" "Plumbing, heat, a/c, elevator checks, light bulbs, landscaping, ice machines, laundry room leaks. If it breaks, I fix it." Kellan exhaled slowly. "That's a lot." Lewis leaned back. "I do what I can. Some stuff just gets delayed." "Can't be everywhere." "Do they know you're this stretched?" "My manager says to log the hours and stop complaining." Kellan didn't respond. Lewis stood, brushing crumbs from his pants. "Anyway, breaks over, you a guest." "Yeah." Lewis gave a short wave. "Enjoy your stay." Kellan watched him disappear around the corner. He spent the afternoon near the lobby, watching check-ins. A woman with 2 toddlers approached the desk. asking if the crib she reserved was already in the room. The front desk clerk, a young man with thick glasses, didn't look up from his screen. "We don't guarantee requests," he said flatly. She frowned. "But I called ahead and they said, doesn't matter. It's not guaranteed." "You can check the luggage room, maybe one's available." "You want me to carry a crib up myself?" he shrugged. "That's how it works." She stood there a moment, stunned, then turned toward the elevators. Kellan walked over, slow and deliberate. "That woman needed help," he said quietly. The clerk finally looked at him. "Not my job to take stuff to rooms. You could have at least called someone." "Housekeeping's short today," the clerk replied, "and they don't like doing extras." Kellan nodded once. "What's your name?" The clerk narrowed his eyes. "Why, just curious." "Illy." Kellan walked away. He waited near the service hallway that led to the storage area. A few minutes later, Grace appeared, carrying a folded crib frame in both arms. Her face was red from the effort. "You're bringing that up yourself," she looked up. "She's got 2 kids. I couldn't say no." She could have hurt herself trying to carry it. Grace gave a half smile. "That's why I didn't let her." He stepped aside as she passed, then followed a few feet behind, watching her maneuver into the elevator. No one offered to help. Later that evening, he sat at the edge of the small courtyard behind the hotel. The air was cool, and the sound of cars on the nearby road filled the silence. The manager in the sweater vest stepped outside to smoke. Kellan approached him slowly. "Evening." The manager glanced over. "You lost?" "No, just getting some air." Long pause. "You run this place?" Kellan asked. The manager exhaled smoke. "Assistant GM, been here since opening last spring. Big job." "Yeah." "Understaffed, overbooked, and the regional guys breathing down our necks about numbers. People seem overwhelmed." "That's hospitality. You either sink or you learn to swim with your mouth shut." Kellan raised an eyebrow. "You think it's sustainable?" The manager tossed his cigarette. "I think we're making budget. That's what matters." He walked back inside without another word. That night, Kellan entered a few notes into his leather journal. Lewis, one-man maintenance team. Grace, burning herself out to cover for everyone else. Illy, dismissive. Tori, careless. Leadership focused on numbers, not people. The next morning, he changed clothes and walked into the staff entrance just before 7. No one stopped him. He walked through the back hallway where carts and boxes were stacked, found the housekeeping supply closet, and waited. When Grace arrived and reached for her checklist clipboard, she froze. "You're not supposed to be in here, I know, just needed a word." She glanced toward the hallway, then back at him. "I can't be seen talking back here." "Then let's walk." After a few seconds, she nodded. They went out through the side door to the alley behind the dumpsters. She rubbed her arms against the morning chill. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," he said. "I just want to understand what's really going on here." She looked at him hard for a moment. "You're not a guest, are you?" "No. Who are you?" "I'll tell you soon. I need you to trust me for just a little longer." She folded her arms. "You've been watching people." "I have." "What do you want from me?" "Honesty." She glanced away, then spoke slowly. "This place wasn't always like this. When we opened, people cared. There was training, backup, real support, but after the first few months, corporate stopped coming. Budget cuts started. We lost a floor supervisor, then a cleaner, then both night shift front desk agents. They never filled the roles. The people who stayed got bitter. Some quit. Some just stopped trying." "Do you feel safe speaking up?" "No, we're told to take concerns to the AGM, but he only cares about occupancy and costs. If you push too hard, your hours get cut." "Do you get breaks?" "Technically, but we're too short-staffed to take them." "Anyone else trying to hold it together?" "Lewis. He doesn't sleep. I don't know how he does it." Kellan nodded. "All right." She narrowed her eyes. "You're going to do something, aren't you?" "Very soon." He left her standing there, then walked back through the service hall, past the boiler room where Lewis was tinkering with a leaking pipe, and stepped onto the staff elevator. Tomorrow, he'd reveal everything. But today, he would watch one last time, not just to see who was failing, but to find out who still believed. Kellan stood just off the lobby, tucked into the alcove where luggage carts were stored. He had changed into a charcoal dress shirt, and dark slacks, nothing flashy, but enough to distance himself from the soft sweaters and khakis he'd worn as Raymond Ellis. His beard was still gone, but the dye had faded from his temples just enough to show his natural age. He no longer needed the glasses. It was just after 9 in the morning. The breakfast rush had ended. A few guests lingered near the elevators, but most had checked out or were preparing to. He waited until the hallway cleared. Then he stepped forward toward the front desk. The same clerk from 2 days ago, Ali was typing rapidly into the reservation system. A thin cord dangled from one ear, playing music he clearly didn't pause. Kellan stopped in front of him and waited. Ali didn't look up. Kellan didn't move. After another 10 seconds, he finally spoke. "You're Illy?" Illy blinked, then looked up. "Yeah, can I help you? I'm not a guest anymore." A pause. "I'm Kellan Easton." Illy's fingers hovered over the keyboard. His eyes scanned Kellan's face, then dropped to his shirt, then back up. "You're..." "The owner." The color drained from Illy's face. Kellan kept his tone even. "Take out the earbuds. Now." Illy yanked them out with a fumbling hand. "I want you to call your assistant general manager to the front desk, immediately. And stay right here until he arrives." Illy nodded stiffly and reached for the phone. Kellan turned and walked toward the dining area. Staff were beginning to clear tables. Grace was at the far end, wiping down a high chair. She didn't notice him at first. He approached quietly. "You're going to want to come with me," he said. She turned, startled. "Is something wrong?" "No, something's about to be made right." He walked back toward the lobby. She followed, hesitantly at first, then quicker as she caught the change in atmosphere. Guests were beginning to notice the tension. A few glanced up from their seats. The assistant general manager, Nalan, came around the corner from the office hallway. He looked confused until he spotted Kellan. "Can I help you? You can explain why your team has made this property unrecognizable?" Nalan stopped mid-step. "I'm sorry, who are you?" "I'm the man who signs your paycheck." Nalan's mouth opened, then closed again. He looked at Grace, then at Ali, who was now standing rigid behind the counter. "I want staff brought into the conference room. Now, every department head and anyone on shift." Nalan glanced around, then spoke carefully. "We're in the middle of transition hours. Housekeeping just started turning rooms, and then they can take 10 minutes. If they've been running on fumes this long, they've earned 10 minutes. Nalan nodded and pulled out his phone. Kellan turned to Grace. "You're coming too." 15 minutes later, the conference room filled in piece by piece. The maintenance hallway echoed with footsteps as Lewis entered last, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked around, puzzled, then spotted Kellan and paused. "You're the guy from the bench." "I am." Lewis took a seat without another word. Kellan remained standing. "I came here pretending to be someone else, because I had to know what was happening. I needed to see what our guests experience. I needed to see what all of you deal with every day." The room was silent. Some staff exchanged glances, but no one spoke. "I saw people doing more than their job should ever ask. I saw someone carrying a crib up 3 floors without a single offer of help. I saw a lone maintenance tech trying to keep the entire property functional with no backup. And I saw one person, Grace, doing 5 rolls without complaint." Grace stared at the table. Kellan continued. "I also saw employees mocking guests, ignoring them, making them feel like they were a burden. And I saw leaders." He looked directly at Nalan, who let it happen. Nalan opened his mouth. "Don't," Kellan said. "Don't spin it. Don't tell me about budget constraints or staffing shortages. I've run hotels with half the team this one has. The issue here isn't just numbers. It's culture." He turned toward the line of employees against the wall. "Brady and Tori, where are they?" Nalan cleared his throat. "Brady's off today. Tori's on laundry. Go get her." A housekeeper stood and left the room. Kellan took a breath, then looked at Nalan again. "What did you do when you heard those two were ridiculing an elderly guest in front of other customers?" Nalan stiffened. "I hadn't heard anything about that. You were in the building. It happened during breakfast. You walked past the dining room twice while they laughed about a man taking too many croissants." Nalan said nothing. You didn't notice because you weren't looking, because you've stopped leading. Tori entered the room, her arms folded, a defensive look on her face. She froze when she saw Kellan at the head of the table. Kellan didn't bother asking for confirmation. You're being suspended pending a full review. If the behavior I witnessed is confirmed by other team members, you will not be returning to this company. She opened her mouth, but he raised a hand. This isn't a debate, he turned to Ali. You're being reassigned to a back office role at a different location. You will not speak to guests again until you complete retraining. If you fail the retraining, you're done. Ali nodded once, staring at the floor. Nolan shifted in his chair. As for you, Kellan said, you're being replaced. The room seemed to exhale at once. You'll stay on for the next 7 days, but only to brief the incoming manager. You're not to make any policy decisions, schedule changes, or disciplinary actions. Grace looked up sharply. Why are you still letting him stay? Because someone needs to explain the full extent of the damage. And I want him to feel what it's like to answer questions instead of avoid them. He placed both hands on the table. From this moment forward, this hotel will operate differently. Grace is being promoted to lead housekeeping supervisor, effective immediately. She'll be provided with 2 additional staff within the next month and will work with the new GM to rebuild the team. He looked at Lewis. You're getting a second technician, starting next week. Until then, we're bringing in a float tech from another property to help with the backlog. Lewis blinked slowly, then gave the smallest nod. Kellan turned to the rest of the room. For those of you who have been trying to hold the line, who have kept showing up even when no one noticed, thank you. That ends now, I see you. And more importantly, you'll be heard moving forward. We're implementing a direct feedback channel to my office. Any retaliation for using it will be grounds for termination. He leaned back slightly. This company was built on one principle, people first, not margins. Not occupancy. People, somewhere along the line that got lost here, and that's on me too. I was too far removed. That ends today. He let the silence settle. Any questions? No one spoke. He nodded. Then let's get back to work. As the room emptied, Kellan remained behind. Grace lingered near the door. You meant all of it? Yes, she hesitated. Then I'll stay. Lewis passed her in the hallway and gave her a quiet nod. By late afternoon, the tone of the hotel had already shifted. It wasn't fixed. Kellan knew better than to expect that, but the air was different. Staff weren't whispering. No one avoided eye contact. Even guests at the front desk got fuller answers, offered with something close to warmth. Kellan stood near the window in the second-floor office, watching the valet guide a guest's car to the side lot. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt responsible. And for the first time in a long while, he also felt present. 2 weeks had passed since Kellan Easton revealed himself. The new general manager, a seasoned operator named Dana Trujillo, had arrived 3 days earlier. Kellan had personally selected her after reviewing internal candidates and rejecting all of them. He wasn't looking for someone who could maintain status quo. He was looking for someone who could rebuild trust from the inside out. Dana didn't wear suits. She wore plain button-down shirts with the sleeves rolled, and she knew every corner of hotel operations. By the end of her first day, she had walked every floor, learned every department name, and sat with the night crew during their break. Kellan had watched quietly from the side. She didn't posture, didn't perform. She just listened. That morning, Kellan returned to the breakfast area not as Raymond Ellis this time and not to surveil. He was there to meet with Grace and Lewis. Both had requested a sit-down with Dana, but she'd asked Kellan to join as well. He arrived early, coffee in hand. Not one employee ignored him now. The staff didn't seem tense anymore, just cautious, like they were still waiting to see if the changes would hold. Grace entered first. She looked sharper now in a navy blouse and slacks. Her badge had been updated with her new title, but her eyes still carried the same vigilance. She took a seat across from him without hesitation. Lewis came in a few minutes later. His uniform had been replaced with a dark gray shirt bearing the updated maintenance logo. He still walked with the same heavy steps, but his expression had shifted. He looked like a man who had exhaled just a little. Dana followed, carrying a tablet. She didn't bother to sit at the head of the table. She sat beside Lewis. Kellan nodded once. "Thanks for making time." Grace folded her hands. "We wanted to talk about how to make the changes stick. It's not just about new hires or titles. People are still on edge." "That's natural," Dana said. "You've been operating in survival mode. It's going to take more than a few policy shifts to convince people this isn't temporary." Lewis leaned forward. "I'm not asking for miracles, but we need to set limits. I've started logging every call and work order. There are still too many requests for one person." Dana tapped the tablet. "I've reviewed the logs. You average 18 maintenance tickets a day. No backlog should be that deep. I reached out to corporate this morning. We're pulling in a part-time technician from the Denver location until we finish hiring a permanent second." Grace blinked. "They agreed." "They don't have much choice," Dana said. "I sent them pictures of the boiler room, that leak you patched with insulation foam. That alone justified the request." Lewis nodded slowly. "It's holding for now, but not forever. It won't need to. The replacement part's already en route." Kellan looked at Grace. "What about your team?" She hesitated. "I've got 3 housekeepers on rotation now. It's better than 2, but we're still stretched. Rooms are clean but not polished. Towels are late getting restocked. We need at least one more person, even just for laundry." Dana made a note. "We've got interviews scheduled this weekend. I want you to sit in on them." Grace's eyes widened. "Me, you're the one they'll be working with. Your input matters more than mine." Lewis gave a short laugh, not unkind. "That's a first." Dana looked at him. "That's how it should have always been." Kellan folded his arms. "This is what I want to see, department heads and frontline staff in the same conversation, speaking freely." Grace looked at him. "People still talk about what happened. About you being here in disguise. Some of them feel guilty, others feel embarrassed." "They should," Kellan said. "But only if they stop there. Embarrassment without change is just vanity. What matters now is what they do next." Lewis leaned back. "Brady quit. I don't think he wanted to stick around once people figured out how much he'd been getting away with." "I assumed he would," Dana said. "We're not going to chase people who don't want to be here, but we are going to support the ones who do." Grace nodded. "Tori's still around, but she's quiet now. Doesn't joke during shift, doesn't cut corners either." "She's not going to be fired?" Lewis asked. "She's on a 90-day review," Dana said. "If she shows up, puts in the work, and regains people's trust, she stays. If not, she goes." Kellan said nothing for a moment. "Then, that's fair." They broke up the meeting shortly after. Dana returned to her office. Grace went to review linen orders. Lewis headed for the second floor where 2 light fixtures were flickering again. Kellan stayed. He took his coffee back to the dining area and sat at the same table where he'd first seen Mr. Wexler humiliated. The elderly man wasn't there that day. He hadn't been back since. Kellan had tried reaching out through the reservation records but came up short. No listed phone number, no email. He hoped the man's last memory of the place wasn't the sound of staff laughing behind his back. A young server approached the table. She was new. Kellan hadn't seen her before. Her name tag read Lena. "Can I clear that for you?" "I'm still working on it, thanks." She hesitated. "You're the owner, right?" "Yes." She shifted her weight. "I just wanted to say this place feels different now. People actually ask how I'm doing when I clock in. Never happened before." "That's good to hear." She gave him a small nod and walked off. Kellan stood and walked toward the lobby. At the front desk, a guest was asking for directions to a local trail. Illy, now stationed at the concierge counter, was answering her with a printed map and a recommendation for nearby coffee. He'd kept his head down since the reassignment, but he'd passed his retraining and hadn't missed a single shift. Kellan didn't interrupt. He walked past them quietly, stepping outside into the crisp mountain air. The parking lot was clean, the landscaping trimmed. A delivery van pulled in and the driver waved as he passed. Kellan waved back. He stood there for a few minutes, watching the rhythm of the place. It wasn't perfect, it wouldn't be anytime soon, but it was healing. That was enough for now. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the small leather notebook he'd used during his undercover stay. He opened it to the last page, where only one line had been added since his reveal. Never assume the culture you built is still the one standing. He closed the book and walked toward his car. This time, he wasn't leaving to distance himself. He was leaving to make room for the people who could carry it forward.